fire captain from the budget. We are under, quote, our limits as far as general government on the 60-40 split. And at this point, I think Finance Committee is in agreement at that point.
FinCom agrees at this point as far as the recommendations under the general government portion of it. Again, the school department is still wrestling with trying to balance the other portion of the budget. And fortunately, again, there's a hearing tomorrow evening, public hearing on the school department budget. But from all indications, what we read in the newspaper, see meetings that have been televised, with the institution of additional user fees and other fees of some sort, they're closing the gap, but still have approximately $400,000 to cover, which is a substantial amount of money. Our hopes, again, is that we will come to town meeting in balance with funding sources necessary to fund the general operating expenses of the town as a whole. We still have a few more meetings to have prior to April town meeting, and hopefully that'll come to fruition. Yes, Mr. Smith.
I guess that brings us to one question. As of yet, we don't have any more meetings scheduled before town meeting. Are we in fact going to meet with the school department prior to town meeting?
There's some, I think what comes out of tomorrow night will dictate scheduling with the school committee.
And do we have a workshop again this week?
Wednesday morning, 8:30.
Wednesday morning, 8:30, okay.
With the school department?
Right. When did you, when was that? So Wednesday morning at 8:30. Yeah. Mr. Baker?
Because they do have a...
So basically what you're saying is just depending on tomorrow night, our schedules will change between now and...
Well, right now, they still have not formalized their final budget at this point.
I understand. Everybody else has been in 2 weeks ago.
They didn't have $600,000 to make up.
I understand, but, they're our department of the town. The way our schedule is set right now, we don't have a meeting with them.
No, we don't have a meeting scheduled with them at this particular juncture because at this particular point, they don't have any final numbers that they're going to present to town meeting. In other words, what's printed in the warrant is what they had at that particular time in order to meet the deadline for the printing of the warrant and for the public hearing. They wanted to put forth, this is what you're going to get for X number of dollars. The dollar amount that they're presenting, again, is approximately $400,000 out of balance, which is going to require, again, additional cuts, some creative financing somehow in order to close that gap. So they're at that juncture. Wherever they're at.
All of that's understood.
They're a separately elected body that
They are a department of the town.
responds as they deem appropriately. Mr. Rowe.
Have they said that they will have, at some point in time, they will have a definitive budget as to what they're going to do? Or are they just, is this going to go on and we won't know until maybe town meeting?
My guess is that we will have a better indication as to where they are prior to town meeting, but it's always subject to, up until they make their motion at town meeting for the dollar amount, I can't venture a guess, and I don't sit here trying to speak for them either. I know I've been in conversation with the chairman and other members of the school committee. We've met in budget sessions with them, going over it, along with the finance committee, the administration.
But I mean, do they, I know right now there's...
And I know that they're still wrestling with the budget.
The option is either cutting the additional 400,000 or whatever, or going to an override.
And they have not made
what I'm asking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are they going to make that decision prior to town meeting, or is that decision going to be made at town meeting?
No, my guess is that will definitely be made prior to town meeting.
And do we know when, so that we can know?
I don't know for sure. I don't know what their meeting schedule is. All I know is that they have their budget workshops. They are meeting with representatives of this board and the administration, the finance director, along with the superintendent, business manager, finance committee. And I'm sure we'll have more than one meeting between now and then for sure. And in the meantime, I would hope that they would have a meeting with us to air out whatever the situation is we're going to be in prior to the town meeting taking place. And as soon as they feel as though they're comfortable in a position to do that, or they take a firm position as to what their final number is going to be, or how they are going to anticipate addressing whatever the number they need is, whether they're going to come in under the cap or look for another way of doing it, whether it be override. They're still at the point where they haven't made that decision yet. Mr. Smith.
I think it's unfortunate what's going on, because I don't think it's fair to go to a town meeting, we've done it before, go to a town meeting and then at the town meeting, start reversing things around and taking capital items and trying to bond them at the town meeting and transfer free cash into operational budgets and things such as that. I think these things should be clarified before we go to the town meeting. I think it's only fair for us to have a meeting with the school department on, say, the 29th, which is a Thursday. And I also think that it should be clarified with the finance committee, with the school department, as to what their intentions are and what they intend on doing when they get to town meeting. Because when I was watching the school committee's meeting last Monday night, I believe it was, there was talk of trying to utilize the money from the sale of the property on Haverhill Street to be placed in their operating budget, and I guess Mr. Jones informed them emphatically that that can't be done by law. And then there was some indications that they would take all the work that we've done for the last 6 months, the capital items, and take the money out of capital, bond those items at town meeting, and try to utilize that money from free cash into the operating budget. And I don't think it's fair to the finance committee, nor is it fair to this board, to go in there without everybody knowing up front what's going on and not have any surprises when we get there. Because as Mr. Jones has indicated, the front half of this warrant, free cash is at a minimum, stabilization fund is at a minimum, and truly the only way to fund the budget for the school department is to go for an override in May. Either that or they drastically have to cut, and I don't see where they can possibly cut their budget. I think the only alternative right now is to go for a Proposition 2.5 override in order to come in with the same services that we currently afford, not only in the educational system, but with the other town services. So I just think we should have, I think they can have their budget pretty much ready by the 29th, which is only 3 days before the town meeting. So, and I would certainly think that the finance committee should be at that meeting, so that we can all just sit down and prepare ourselves to go to town meeting with everybody thinking on the same page, so that we don't have to do a lot of deliberating at town meeting about where the money's coming from and making an unhealthy situation for the town accountant to keep juggling the books on every individual article. I just think we should have that meeting, and I think when we meet Wednesday morning with the school department, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions answered there, and maybe that'll satisfy everybody's needs, and it'll be just simple telephone calling or whatever to enlighten everybody on what's going to be going on, what's going to transpire at town meeting. Because it really is coming down to, I thought this was going to happen last year. I think we were within $10,000 last year of going for an override. This year we're about $450,000 or something like that. So it doesn't look like we're going to make it this year. There's just no funds available. So I would just think we should have that meeting and iron it all out prior to going into town meeting trying to decide that. That's what I am.
Mr. Dagan, you had hand up, Mr. Rowell.
I'm all set.
We're all set. Mr. Rowell?
Well, I've got two things. One thing is that I think people have to understand, if we have a general override, it's not for the school budget. It's for the total town budget, so that we don't, if we have to go for an override, we go for an override, and it doesn't say that we're going to go for an override for, say, $200,000 to complete the school budget. We go for whatever we need for general government, and then we go back, and then we decide how we're going to spend it. So, it kind of complicates things. It's not a simple thing that we have an override for X number of dollars to complete the school budget. That's not the way it works. We go for an override for a certain amount of money, then we come back and then we decide how we're going to spend it.
I don't know that I agree with you on that.
Right. Well, that's the way it was explained to me, that it's part of the general government, and that money, it comes back. Because if you don't get the override and you don't have enough money, then you go back and everything is at risk.
My understanding is that, there has to be, there can be more specificity to the the override for operating expenses as far as where it's going to be earmarked. I think the funds can be earmarked. Mr. Jones?
If there is an override decided by the Board of Selectmen, that's within your purview only to determine that. The motion on town meeting floor can be made contingent upon an override. In other words, you can have two budget levels, one that you accept the town meeting for operating availability, money available, and then the contingent money, which is the override portion, arguably, let's say, $400,000. However, when you put that to the general public for an election, you must have specificity, and you will have to say in that override what it is dedicated for, that initial override. So it won't be general government, it'll be why do you need it? It could be simply stated for school department operating expenses. That must be specified when you go to the election, and if you do that at the town meeting, you have until September 15 to hold the override. If you wait till after September 15, it becomes moot. You have to do it by September 15 for the benefit of the state and for the benefit of setting the tax rate for the coming year.
Okay. That was, Mr. Ralph?
Just a little more. So then, if at the town meeting, just for sake of argument, the school still comes in and says we need 400,000, and everything else is passed the way we've approved it, and we go for an override, and we specify for the school,
No,
right? And it does not pass, then the school has to cut that out of their budget. They can't come back to the general government and say, you know, we're gonna have to cut fire, police, public works, town, whatever.
No.
They have to take that because the townspeople said no to the override for that specific item for money for the school. Then in fact, the school has to decide where they take the cuts.
I would repeat that depending on how the article is stated on town meeting floor, you could end up with two numbers. For argument's sake, let's say 15,200,000. Town meeting could approve that, and then they could add a contingency amount of 400,000, 500,000, being an override. The override fails, and town meeting has already approved the budget bottom line that it feels it can fund without an override. And therefore, the override fails, the school department still has a budget to operate on, and they know exactly how much it is.
In other words, as we appropriate the money in April town meeting, we have specific dollar amounts approved. And as Mr. Jones pointed out, all the way down the line you do it, and then you specify at the end the $50 million too, which is what you can raise, appropriate, and handle, with $400,000 an override would have to come back. Well, it would be basically targeted at the school department, because that's where it would fall short.
Basically, it would be.
Right, because that's where it would fall short.
And the other question I had and I mentioned it earlier, I think it might be a mistake on the printing of the town warrant on page 3.
Finance committee report? Finance committee report?
Yeah. You have,
Quite possible.
pardon?
Quite possible, go ahead, Dave.
Well, you had, I'm not sure, I believe it's just transposed the numbers. You have direct labor costs account for 49.2% of the general government budget, which includes shared costs, such as pensions and benefits. And then the next statement is direct labor costs account for 63.9% of the general government budget, excluding pensions and benefits. Are those numbers?
Now, when you include pensions and benefits, it's a higher sum, and therefore the percent of labor would go down. If you deduct pensions and benefits,
That's not what's printed, though. That's what I'm getting at. I think it's,
Yeah, that's,
no, it says direct labor accounts for 49% of the general government if you include the shared costs such as pensions and benefits.
right.
Should you take out pensions and benefits, then labor for general government is 63.9%.
Mr. Reitmeyer.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Jones, please? Mr. Jones, every year that as the school budget